Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to this special briefing on Prime Minister's participation in the 19th G20 Summit. We have with us Shri Amitabh Kant, India's Sherpa for G20, and Shri Vikram Mishri, Foreign Secretary of India, to brief us on this, on Prime Minister's engagement in the BRICS Summit. We are also joined by our ambassador to Brazil, Shri Suresh Reddy, as also Srimati Pooja Kapoor, who happens to be Sous Sherpa of the G20 process. With that, first I invite Shri Amitabh Kant to make his remarks. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Randhir. I'm really delighted to share with you the outcomes of this very, very significant engagement of the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, and its participation in the just concluded 19th G20 Summit in Rio. And this was the 11th G20 Summit in which the Honorable Prime Minister was participating. This summit in Rio had the overarching theme of building a just world and a sustainable planet. And this year, the G20 has delivered a very strong message on the fight against hunger and poverty. One of the very important outcomes of this summit has been that leaders of G20 were invited, countries and heads of international organizations, they were all invited, and they have participated and launched the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. And India has also joined this alliance as one of the 147 founding members. This includes about 81 countries, the African Union and European Union, 24 international organizations, 9 international financial institutions, and 31 philanthropic and non-governmental organizations. So the Rio de Janeiro G20 leaders' declaration was very intense discussion. Prior to the Leaders Summit, there was a Sherpa negotiation which went on for about 7 days non-stop. And, after a huge number of virtual sessions, physical sessions, the declaration has been passed. And this declaration really demonstrates the unity of G20 towards a range of issues. And the declaration focuses on hunger and poverty, it focuses on climate and energy, it focuses on developmental issues, it focuses a lot on, accelerating the pace of sustainable development goals. There's been a huge emphasis on climate and energy also, but it also focuses a lot on, a major component of this was geopolitics. The declaration has underlines the immense human suffering and adverse impacts of ongoing conflicts. It builds on everything that the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration had said in its geopolitics para relating to the planet and people. And it largely, that the para in Rio has been drawn from the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration. And the declaration also has expressed concern over the situation in Middle East, because that was a new conflict which had come up, and therefore that there is a complete para on the Middle East conflict as well. But I would like to point out that the Prime Minister spoke in 2 sessions, one on hunger and poverty and the other on sustainable development and energy transition. And in both of them, he highlighted the huge impact which India had made. In the first one, he highlighted about lifting 250 million people above the poverty line and what measures India has taken. So his speeches are available. So, and in the second one on sustainable development, he emphasized how India is meeting this target of 500 gigawatt of renewable energy, or India is the only country of G20 which has achieved its targets 9 years ahead of schedule and has already achieved 200 gigawatt. But I would emphasize that many of the ambitions, as you are all aware that the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration was, under Prime Minister's leadership, was very inclusive, it was very forward-looking, and it was very ambitious. And many of the ambitions and the key outcomes from the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration find a place in the Rio Declaration. And I would emphasize that the importance of mainstreaming life, that is lifestyle for environment figures here, the speedy implementation of G20 2023 action plan on accelerating progress on SDG figures here, the acknowledgement of digital public infrastructure and the role of data for development figures here, the encouragement of women-led development figures here, and the recognition of towards better, bigger and more effective multilateral development bank figures here. There is a Deccan high-level principle on food security and nutrition which has been reiterated. The role of traditional and complementary medicine figures here. And in climate, moving from billions to trillions of dollars figures here, and India pushed for ambition in a very big way on climate finance by bringing in the concept of billions to trillions, as well as emphasizing the new collective qualified goals of new funding. And the resolution, the declaration reiterates what was said in New Delhi on tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency. And therefore, many of these issues find a place here. The Prime Minister has reiterated India's commitment to sustainable development. He had highlighted in a very major way the strides made in energy transition, including the renewable energy sector. I would merely say that there has been a lot of emphasis on what has been achieved earlier in New Delhi. And only other point I would like to make is that in addition to this, there was a declaration. A declaration was also done on digital public infrastructure and artificial intelligence and data for governance. And this was important because throughout our G20, we had highlighted and emphasized the digital public infrastructure last year. And this, to my mind, this is a very major step forward because this was an opportunity to demonstrate that DPI can be a very major driver of removing hunger, poverty, and inequality. And the benefits of growth through DPI will flow to the people of the world. So we linked it up with DPI, artificial intelligence, and how data for governance based on our own experience of aspirational district can be used. We had today in the event, several countries participated. We had Italy, Portugal, Spain, Singapore, Norway, Nigeria, and we had the United Nations, World Bank, WTO, IMF, WHO, all of them participating, which now truly demonstrates, and this declaration has also been endorsed by Germany and France, which truly demonstrates that through the G20, we've made digital public infrastructure a worldwide movement based on open source, open API, globally interoperable standard, and therefore for the benefit of the citizens of the world, and therefore they will really own the data. And we are seeing more and more countries of the advanced world, the Western world, also joining us in this collaboration. With these few words, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now invite Foreign Secretary to brief us on Prime Minister's bilateral meetings and other engagements. Sir.
Thank you, Randhir. As you are probably aware, Prime Minister had the opportunity to meet with a large number of world leaders on the sidelines of the ongoing and just concluded G20 summit. There were 10 formal bilateral meetings that he had. And besides that, a number of pull asides as well. We have, there were 6 bilateral meetings yesterday with the newly elected president of Indonesia, the newly elected Prime Minister of Portugal, with the Prime Minister of Italy, the Prime Minister of Norway, the newly elected Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and with President Macron. We've already issued press releases in respect of these meetings. If there are any questions about that, I would be happy to answer them. Today, there were 4 bilateral meetings first of all, in the morning with the host of the G20 summit, President Lula of Brazil. Prime Minister also met with the newly elected president of Chile. And also he had his first ever meeting with the president of Argentina. And his bilateral meetings today concluded with the annual India-Australia summit with the Prime Minister Albanese. This was the second India-Australia summit. As I said, there were a large number of pull-aside meetings, amongst them with the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Singapore, the Prime Minister of Spain, the President of Egypt, President of the Republic of Korea, the UN Secretary General, and the President of the EU Commission. Let me say just a few words about the meetings that were held today. And we will be issuing press releases about each one of these meetings as well. The first meeting, as I said, was with President Lula of Brazil. Prime Minister congratulated President Lula on the successful organization of the G20 presidency, as well as President Lula's leadership of IBSA, the India-Brazil-South Africa Forum. He commended President Lula's initiative on the launch of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, and also the focus of the G20 agenda on the priorities of the Global South, which, as the Sherpa just mentioned, aligned nearly perfectly and carried forward the valuable work that was done during India's own presidency of the G20 last year. The President and the Prime Minister held discussions on enhancing the India-Brazil strategic partnership. Both of them agreed that there was still more potential to be explored and exploited in this partnership in a variety of areas, ranging from agriculture to defense, to digital technology, tourism, biofuels, pharmaceuticals, and space. In agriculture especially, Prime Minister recalled that many years ago it was actually the export of Indian bovine germplasm that led to a revolution in the genetic stock of Brazil's reserves of livestock. And that there were now, both countries were presented with interesting prospects for taking forward this cooperation. Similarly, there was discussion on the possibilities on cooperation in green hydrogen, as well as in the budding defense field. In space, there has already been valuable cooperation between the two sides. ISRO has already launched a couple of satellites for the Brazilian Space Agency. The two sides also agreed on cooperation in the area of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, biotechnology, and ethanol blending. And the two sides also had, the two leaders also had discussions on the exchange of high-level visits in the coming year. With the President of Chile, as I said, this was the first meeting between the two leaders. This is also, the coming year is also the 75th year of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Prime Minister congratulated President Gabriel Boric Font on assuming office, and the two sides discuss the potential in areas such as trade and pharmaceutical cooperation. There are discussions on a commercial cooperation agreement that are ongoing between the two sides. And the President of Chile expressed a great deal of interest in not just the commercial opportunities with India, but also in wanting to build relations in the field of culture, knowledge, traditions, student exchange, etc. Chile is also an important player in the critical mineral space, and therefore the two sides discussed the possibilities of cooperation in that particular area. The third meeting today was the meeting between Prime Minister and the President of Argentina, Javier Milei. As you are aware, this was again the first ever meeting, bilateral meeting between the two leaders. Prime Minister congratulated President Milei on his election victory last year and on the progress that Argentina had made under his presidency. And President Milei likewise congratulated the Prime Minister on his historic third term, for which the Prime Minister took office in June this year. There were discussions on a number of areas. I should perhaps mention that there was a very rich and vibrant discussion on governance, and the two sides, the two leaders exchanged their thoughts and their experience in handling issues related to governance. They also expressed satisfaction at the broadening of the strategic partnership between the two countries in various areas. There are opportunities for the two sides to cooperate in areas related to pharmaceuticals, defense technology, critical minerals, particularly lithium. And I should mention that in the lithium space, there's been a significant agreement just signed just earlier this year between India and Argentina, whereby an Indian public sector undertaking has entered into an agreement to explore a lithium mine in Argentina. This is possibly the first such initiative by an Indian entity anywhere in the world with regard to lithium and critical minerals. The two sides also looked at the possibilities of cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, space, agriculture, science and technology, and information technology. I must mention that with the number of leaders, especially hailing from Latin America, there was discussion on the popularity of yoga, of Ayurveda, of traditional systems of medicine in all of these countries, and leaders agreed on the need to reinforce these ties and look at further popularization of these elements. The last meeting this morning, as I mentioned, was the annual summit between India and Australia. Prime Minister met with Prime Minister Albanese of Australia for the second India-Australia annual summit. This meeting was the 11th meeting between Prime Minister and Prime Minister Albanese. And just shows the intensity of the exchange between the two leaders and the two countries in just the last few years. The Prime Ministers reaffirmed the strength of the multifaceted ties under the India-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. They expressed satisfaction at the fact that since the signing of the ACTA agreement on trade. Bilateral trade had increased by nearly 40%. They welcomed the opening of an Indian consulate in Brisbane and the opening of an Australian consulate in Bangalore. Prime Minister welcomed the presence of Australian universities in India, and the two leaders agreed to take forward the already existing cooperation in areas related to defense, critical minerals, ports, space, and shipbuilding. The highlight of the meeting, however, was the launch of the Renewable Energy Partnership between the two countries. With the launch of the Renewable Energy Partnership, both sides expect to bring greater energy and drive to this most important of areas for cooperation between the two sides. Under the partnership, there will be intensified dialogue in the RE sector, especially on diversifying the clean energy supply chain, on accelerating energy transition. Some of the areas that will be a focus under the Renewable Energy Partnership will be solar photovoltaics, green hydrogen, energy storage, and capacity building a workforce that is trained in the transition to renewable energy. There will be annual ministerial meetings of the concerned ministers for renewable energy, and the dialogue, the partnership will also include track 1.5 and track 2 dialogues that will bring in the private sector as well as research institutions. Naturally, there was a lot of discussion on cooperation under the Quad format as well, and on the possibility of encouraging investments between the two countries in both directions. No India-Australia meeting is complete without a mention of cricket, and therefore both Prime Ministers welcomed and sent their best wishes to the two cricket teams that are about to engage in what is possibly amongst the most watched sporting contests anywhere in the planet as the India-Australia Test Series gets underway. Prime Minister Albanese, of course, also made special mention of the diversity of the Indian diaspora, the Indian expatriate community in Australia, and how that was such a strong bridge between the two countries. Let me stop there, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Yeah, questions? Sahil?
Sir, I'm Sahil from ENI. My question is related to India's position in G20 as well as the voice of the Global South. What are the issues of the Global South raised during this presidency of Brazil?
Questions. More questions? Yeah. Okay. Gautam?
So this is Gautam Roy from DD India. I just wanted to ask Mr. Kant, in terms of the G20 declaration, the Rio declaration, it had a lot of content on how to tackle climate change, and there was an expectation that it will aid the process that is ongoing in Azerbaijan as well, with the COP29 in terms of reaching some sort of agreement on climate financing, the billions to trillions aspect. Could you tell us how that process has helped along with what has been discussed in Rio?
More questions? Please.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Sakshi from All India Radio. So my question is, how does India view the role of G20 compared to other multilateral forums? And what unique contribution does it believe that G20 can make to address the issues of global challenges that we are facing now?
Mm-hmm. You have a question here?
Ilya Arkhip of Bloomberg News. Could you please tell us about India's position on the escalation in conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Is India disappointed that President Putin didn't listen to Prime Minister Modi calls for finding a peaceful solution and instead he brought North Korean troops into the conflict. Does it change anything for India in terms of how India views this conflict? And has Prime Minister had any discussions about the latest escalation after the North Korean troops arrived to Russia, that there was also recent long-ranging strikes on the Russian territory from the Ukraine? And does India plan to ask Russia to clarify its stance on the use of nuclear weapons because it's updated its nuclear doctrine? Thank you very much. Sorry, it's a bit of too many questions in one, but obviously understand the sensitivity of the subject. Thank you.
We can take 2 questions from here and then we'll come back for.
सर, मैं असीम मिश्रा डीडी न्यूज़ से। सर, हिंदी में सवाल कि जिस तरह से क्लाइमेट चेंज को लेकर बहुत सारी बातें हुई और डिक्लेरेशन में बहुत सारी बातें लिखी गई हैं, न्यू कलेक्टिव क्वालिफाइड गोल्स किस तरह से सेट किए गए हैं और किस तरह से ये क्लाइमेट मिटिगेशन में काम कर सकते हैं, क्लाइमेट चेंज को मिटिगेट करने में?
ठीक है। Sahil, you have another question?
So my question is related to EM's meeting with the Chinese Foreign Minister and on the roadmap ahead for Mansarovar Yatra resumption, which was mentioned in the document.
Sir. Thank you. Sir, please.
So let me dwell on a few issues, and well, the broader question of Russia will be touched upon by the Foreign Secretary, but I'll touch upon the G20 aspect of it. But let me first say that the Global South, this is the first time that the G20 was held in Indonesia, then it was held in India, it was Brazil, and then now the baton has been passed on to South Africa. So emerging markets will have to play a very critical role, and if you look at the global growth, while the developing countries are growing at 1.8%, emerging markets are growing at about 4.4%. That means, and according to both IMF and World Bank, for the next 4 decades, 70% of the growth is going to come from the global south. And that is simply because of demographics. And this requires more financial flows to be passed on to the global south countries. And if you look at this particular G20, other than both for hunger and poverty, the focus on inequality, the focus on sustainable development goals, the focus on digital public infrastructure, the focus on nutrition, all that demonstrates the huge commitment that was made. To my mind, both development and climate action are 2 sides of the same coin. And therefore, climate was also very critical. We were very mindful of the fact on climate not to get into too many specific, other than saying we'll move from billions to trillions or we'll lay down an ambitious NCQG. It was very difficult to get into details because simultaneously, this is the first time that simultaneously you were having a COP at Baku which is going on, and any getting into too many details would have had a very adverse implication on negotiations there, and therefore we were very careful. But we've reiterated the need for tripling of renewable energy, we've reiterated the need for doubling energy efficiency, we've talked about green hydrogen and many other factors. So this is if you read the document in its totality, it's very much a document of the global south. And I would merely say that if you look at the geopolitical paras of this particular G20 declaration, it talks about a comprehensive ceasefire in Gaza in line with the UN Security Resolution 2735, and in Lebanon, both in Gaza and in Lebanon, and that will enable citizens to return safely to their homes on both sides of the blue line. It also talks about the commitment to the vision of a two-state solution where Israel and Palestinian state live side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders. This is as far as the Middle East is concerned. So it talks about a comprehensive ceasefire. And as far as the Russia-Ukraine crisis is concerned, it talks about a comprehensive, just and durable peace upholding all the principles and all the purposes and principles of the UN Charter for the promotion of peaceful, friendly and good neighborly relations amongst nations. I'm not getting into the details, but it's quite a detailed formulation which also condemns terrorism in all its forms and manifestation. And it also talks about the peaceful resolution of conflicts and efforts, because the intention there was to get into the principles of what is required rather than start naming countries which would have led to a stalemate. So broadly the adverse impact of wars and conflict on citizens and laying down the clear principles was broadly accepted, and that is how it is. But this is very much a G20 presidency, because this is the first time after India brought AU into the G20. And to the question which Madam asked from here, G20 used to account for about 72% of the global GDP, but after India's leadership, we brought AU. Prime Minister's effort brought AU as a member. So actually it's G21 now because of India's effort. And that means that today G20 accounts for 85% of the global GDP. It accounts for about 84% of the global trade. It accounts for almost 80% of the global population. And therefore, it's a very, very inclusive body. It's the only body where decisions taken by it are implemented by multilateral institutions like World Bank or IMF, and therefore calling for a better, bigger and more effective bank, which is again the formulation of the New Delhi Leaders Declaration. India also constituted that committee led by N.K. Singh and Larry Summers. Its recommendations are now being implemented by the World Bank. So all this will lead to greater flow of financial resources to the global south. Thank you.
Let me address these other two questions. I think on the question related to Russia, Ukraine, well, obviously this was a subject that formed part of discussions in a number of bilateral meetings. And as Sherpa has just also read out the formulation related to this issue, which reflects the consensus position at this point in time with regard to this conflict. A number of developments have happened. You cited some of those developments, but I would say that the fundamental position of India and our approach towards the conflict has not changed in any way. We continue to call for a way to end this conflict through a return to dialogue and diplomacy by discussions directly, if need be, between the two sides, and for the international community to play a supportive role in this regard. Obviously, we would be concerned by any kind of escalation that would threaten a more damage and loss of life and destruction to property that has been caused. With regard to what you said about the statements related to nuclear weapons that have been made, if I'm not mistaken, I think the G20 declaration also has a formulation with regard to this. And again, India's position on the possible use of nuclear weapons in this conflict has also been made clear in the past, and there is no change in that. Insofar as the question related to EM's meeting with the Chinese foreign minister is concerned, the meeting took place yesterday, and the two foreign ministers, as they had been mandated by the two leaders when the meeting took place between Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping in Kazan on the sidelines of the BRICS summit last month. The foreign ministers met to exchange views They reviewed the progress in the recent disengagement in the India-China border areas, and also discussed the next steps that are to be taken in the bilateral relationship. We've issued a press release also on the meeting, and some of those next steps are outlined in that. The two sides are discussing the possible scheduling of an early meeting between the special representatives of the two sides, and there are meetings at the regular institutional level at the foreign minister, foreign secretary, and the vice minister level that are also being discussed. There will be a number of issues of interest that will come up in these meetings. You referred to the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. In fact, the External Affairs Minister did flag this as one of the issues to discuss. But when the institutional mechanisms start meeting, I'm sure a number of these issues will be taken up in those meetings. Thank you.
One last point I want to make is that as Troika member, India has played a very key and critical role in all aspects, whether it was climate, whether it was energy, whether it was geopolitics, Prime Minister's own personal relations, bilateral meetings, etc., have all played a very critical role in, and our membership of Troika has been a key catalyst in assisting and supporting Brazil in arriving at a consensus. Thank you.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the close of this press briefing. Thank you very much for your presence.